Things are not right in the land of human absurdity. The tyrants of business in Wall Street will moan of the sudden heat when they try to swindle the insane one who realizes that he has the game won. The game of human absurdity.
And welcome to the Oddity Archive, the show that saves your giblets and makes a lovely gravy out of them. In case you didn't get the clue, it's Thanksgiving. Well, what better time than to tackle our first ever countdown special? While America is generally a pretty innovative place, sometimes we use our creative streak to make some questionable items. Oh yeah, and you're not off the hook either, Japan. In fact, you may be worse than us. Most terrifyingly, sometimes these things actually catch on. Anyway, for the sake of this episode, I'm going to confine this list, or these lists as it were, to a time period I actually lived through. So with that, today we attack the top 4 trendy turkeys and the top 4 technological turkeys of the 90s. The 1990s, that is. Okay, before you ask, why 2 lists? And why are they so short? Well, initially this was going to be a top 10 list, but my poor little brain damn near exploded in trying to find 10 items I wanted to discuss. I came up with 8 items, and there was a clear divide in topic. 4 of the items were just garden variety fads, and the other 4 pertained to technology. Hence, 2 lists. So with that, let's get started. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the top 4 trendy turkeys of the 90s. That's going to be a thorn in my side for this entire episode, isn't it? Number 4, Big Mouth Billy Bass. By the time Gemmy Industries introduced Big Mouth Billy Bass in the late 90s, we'd already seen the likes of Pete the Repeat Parrot, Douglas Fir, and the Goofy Pumpkin. All items designed to scare children and the elderly and annoy the living hell out of everyone else. Now, in case you've been living under a pet rock, this animatronic fish plays cheekily chosen pop songs like Al Green's Take Me to the River when the sensor is activated. In the early 2000s, after several shock-induced comas and deaths, not to mention hundreds of lawsuits, Billy's sensor was removed and the unit became entirely button-operated. This may not even count as a trend, because it's never gone away. In the years since, we've seen Travis the Singing Trout, Harry and his Harmonizing Herrings, Wally the Wailing Walleye, and Sammy the Serenading Salmon. Okay, I made most of those up, but we have seen Big Mouth Billy Bass Christmas Edition and Big Mouth Billy Bones. Most recently, we've seen the iPhone app edition of Billy. I wish I was joking. Now, I wanted to demo this app for you, but I don't have an iPhone, and the only person I know with an iPhone, when asked if I could demo the app, promptly beat me with a lead pipe, so you'll just have to do without on this one. Maybe it's for the best. Number 3, clear colas. I think most children of the 90s at least tried a clear cola. I know I did, and as far as I can remember, I kind of liked it. Oh, who am I kidding? Crystal Pepsi is the taste of holy water, if it were a soda. Since the Cinema Snob tried it a few years ago on one of his shows, I feel no need to find and sample any 20-year-old Crystal Pepsi. Besides, the budget of this show is so low that I'd use up the next year's worth of funds to acquire a single can of the stuff on eBay, then spend the next month puking it back up. Because Crystal Pepsi was such a rousing success, the Coca-Cola Corporation jumped on the bandwagon with Tab Clear, which I have no recollection of whatsoever. Crystal Pepsi was also the impetus behind another bland cola trend, the vanilla colas. And as an added bonus, I guess we could call this number 2.5. Anyone remember these? You ought to see my dentist bills. Number 2. Pogs. Based on a Hawaiian game played with old milk bottle tops, Pogs were kind of the 90s kids equivalent to marbles or jacks, just with freakishly overpriced cardboard or plastic or metal discs. I admit, I bought into this fad hook, line, and slammer. Now, since this is the only item on the list that I actually have access to, it seemed only just that I do a filmed segment on it. I'm talking about the Pogs. Now, as you can see, I've got my World Tournament, or what's that, official tournament pad from the World Pog Federation, which I'm sure is still just swinging today. And of course, I've got just a modest collection of Pogs here. Now, let's go through some of these poison ones. I got a lot of these. I don't really remember if there's any significance to that. What else have I got here? More poison. Oh, this is my favorite one. My beloved David Letterman Pog. From the home office in Sioux City, Iowa, where they made all those wonderful top 10 lists. So anyway, let's clear off some of this mess here. See if we can't remember how to play this. Now, everybody was so into the fad itself that we were all about collecting these stupid things, and we didn't really bother to learn how to, play or anything. And since I haven't so much as thought about these things in about 15 years, and not only that, this is the first time I've seen my Pogs in about 15 years. I found them preparing to do this episode. And I'll throw on the saw blade one. If memory serves, you have your stack of Pogs, and then you've got, in your special case, slammers. These heavy metal and plastic things that you use to slam down on your stack of Pogs. So, as you can see, I've got Beavis and Butthead here. I have a couple of them, actually. And because I was such a smart topical kid at the time, the Bill Clinton with Beavis and Butthead. What else have I got here? Oh, yeah. Pinky and the Brain. Alright, let's see if I can still do this. I didn't bother to actually, Google the rules or anything, just because I'm lazy. So, but if memory serves, you take one of your slammers. I'll take my nice big heavy metal one here. And you slam down on the stack, and however many Pogs get turned over, you keep. It's sort of the same principle as marbles. But then again, so let's try it. And I got one. As you can see, I'm just exquisite at this game. Let's try it one more time here. Slammer. Yeah, I suck. Anyway, those are Pogs. And finally, the number one stupid fad of the 90s, virtual pets. This was the Betsy Wetsy of the Y generation. Now, unlike those old dolls where neglect did not equal the end of your doll, these things would freak if you didn't feed it, clean up after it, put it to bed, and so on and so forth. On the other side of the coin, you had to make sure you didn't overfeed it. Picky little shits. It's because of these things that I think the birth rate amongst Gen Yers has been and will remain freakishly low. It's because we're all terrified of having kids. Thank you, Tamagotchi. Okay, personal story time. Again? Come on, I'm not that boring. Virtual pets were the bane of my existence from about 1996 to 98. Every kid in school had either a Tamagotchi or a Gigapet or whatever. Except me. I was too cool for such trivialities. Nevertheless, I remember when a friend of mine stole his sister's Gigapet, and we did what any sensible 11-year-old boys would do with such a thing. We killed it. It took 5 days and endless amounts of willful abuse, but we eventually got that little plastic chicken nugget to bite the dust. Now it's time for the fun stuff. I bring to you now the top 4 technological turkeys of the 90s. First up, number 4. The Virtual Boy. In some of the nicer arcades in the early 90s, you started to see virtual reality games pop up, particularly flight simulators. It was just a matter of time before somebody attempted a home version of these games, and lo and behold, Nintendo introduced the Virtual Boy in 1995. There were 2 issues with the Virtual Boy: the price and the limited number of games. Only 14 titles were ever released in North America. Okay, I lied. There's another flaw. The games were loaded with design flaws, most notably the general lack of first-person perspective. Isn't that sort of important in virtual reality? Plus, I hope you had a high tolerance for the color red. Virtual Boy was discontinued less than a year later. Admittedly, I'm not much of a gamer. In fact, I still have yet to master Pong, so I guess I was a little out of the scope of the intended audience here. But the reason I chose this for the list is that it's symptomatic of a greater issue, one that will permeate the rest of this list. It's not necessarily a bad idea, but it was an issue of a manufacturer rushing out an underdeveloped product. Number 3. The mini-disc. Since the Walkman was such a huge success, Sony rushed out the Discman in the mid-80s, though the technology wasn't quite up to par yet. By the early mid-90s, the technology for the Discman was still not quite up to par. In fact, I remember my first Discman circa 1998. Okay, I was a little late to the party. While my Discman was top or near top of the line, it nonetheless skipped like a mother. You just touched the damn thing and your CD would skip. Anyway, back to the early mid-90s. Sony did what on the surface would seem like the sensible thing to do. Develop a disc that wouldn't be so prone to skipping on a mobile player. Like a CD, you were still looking at a 16-bit 44.1 kHz sampling rate, so it was inconsequential from a sonic standpoint. You were also still looking at between 74 and 80 minutes of potential playtime, so it was inconsequential from that standpoint as well. However, at about $800 upon its initial release in 1992, it was just a little out of reach of most folks. To add insult to injury, during the minidisc's heyday, not very many albums were released on minidisc. Sony figured you could just buy the CDs and burn them to minidisc, somewhat negating the purpose of their own product. Towards the end of its run, circa 2006, I actually briefly owned a proper standalone minidisc recorder. The slightest jostle would disrupt your recording, and the error messages were incessant. There was one really nice feature to minidiscs though. When recording, you could control transitions between tracks right down to a 60th of a second. After the fact, no less. For a Pink Floydian like myself, Segway City, that feature was indispensable. But then again, by 2006, you could get a good, reliable Discman for $25, and you could get the Redbook standard CD burner program for your computer for just under $100, with rewritable CDs costing about the same, if not a little less than minidiscs. Or you could get an iPod. The standalone CD burner units were pretty reliable too. Back to the old days, I wound up using a cassette Walkman as late as 2002. Hey, at least it didn't skip. Number 2. Web TV. Web TV was released by Microsoft in 1996 as a means for folks who wanted to try this newfangled internet thing without actually having to bother with, like, a computer. I guess they figured they could get the terminally frightened of technology old person demographic. Which begs the question, if you think your target audience is so afraid of technology, why would they want to get on the internet to begin with? Especially in 1996. I guess they figured old people must like watching TV, particularly cable TV. Though, come to think of it, none of my elder relatives had cable at the time. Oh well. This would be that comfortable link between the old and the new. Having said all that, web TV was, for all intents and purposes, a glorified cable box, allowing you to watch your usual cable TV stuff and check your email, and have limited web access. Believe it or not, web TV, later rebranded as MSN TV, still exists, but only for existing subscribers. And lastly, the number one technological turkey of the 90s, the video CD. This is the one home video format I did not discuss on the Format Wars episode, largely because it was never a contender, at least not in North or South America, Europe, Africa, Australia, and for whatever reason, Antarctica. In 1993, Philips thought they could preempt the Laserdisc as the primary disc-based home video format. They attempted that with the video CD. They had half a good idea with this format, the idea to put video on a standard CD, much like how you could get audio and or video with magnetic tape. And that was about it. One of the main problems was that you could only fit 83 minutes on a video CD. At least a Laserdisc would get you 2 hours, though you'd have to flip the disc halfway through, and you'd get uncompressed analog video and audio in the deal. You got neither with the video CD. The capacity of a video CD with error correction would only get you about 5 minutes of uncompressed analog video, which was unacceptable. So, to up the efficiency, Philips had to develop a means of creating a digital stream of video and audio. Once they did that, they found that things like error correction had to be sacrificed. The first video compression codec also had to be developed, namely the MPEG-1 format. The image quality of the video CD is about on par with a well-mastered VHS tape.
Okay, you're probably going, is this like an Oxema commercial or what? But seriously?
Philips dumped their video CD idea into the long-lost CDI, or Compact Disc Interactive Machine. That is, as long as you were willing to buy the MPEG-1 card at $100 plus. The CDI, as well as the similar gaming console, the Panasonic 3DO, was meant to be like the Commodore 64 from a decade earlier, in that it was meant as a low-level personal computer, mostly used for entertainment and children's education as opposed to productivity.
What I wouldn't give to do her plumbing.
Whoa, I'd call that better living through chemistry.
If anything good has come from the video CD in the long run, it's that you can still play these discs on most DVD players and many computers. Well, that does it for today's ratings grab, Oddity Archive. Join us next time when I actually acquire a CDI machine and attempt to mutilate Todd Rundgren's CDI album, No World Order, into listenability. It can't be done. What do you mean it can't be done? It can't. Well, there goes that idea.